Welcome. You are listening to and hopefully watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's Monday, 11/9/2020. Well, if you're expecting a in-depth post-mortem of the election, if you wanted to get our opinion of who won and who lost, who really did, you came to the wrong place. Not what we're talking about today, because that's going to work itself out one way or the other. We're more concerned about the aftermath of the election, regardless who wins, because it's going to be interesting. Not just interesting like, oh, gee, isn't that interesting? It's going to be interesting, like the Chinese say, interesting times are upon us. And John Rubino is with us. So you're guaranteed interesting times today, at least. And well, we'd like to hear your opinion, aftermath, the result of the election. We don't want to know who won or lost. That's for the courts to decide. And whether they decide it or not, well, we'll see about that. But email us, kl@kerrylutz.com. Well, divided government is bad for stocks, except for today, John.
Hey, Kerry. Yeah, the big news today is that yet another big drug company has come up with a vaccine that seems to work. This was Pfizer, and they're talking about a 90% success rate, and that just sent the markets, into a bout of euphoria here. Everything risky, just about, is up, except for the stay-home stocks, and then safe haven assets are getting whacked, like gold. It's way down, but. A couple of things about this. One is that let's assume for a second, take this huge leap of faith and assume that the vaccine is the cure, that it actually makes COVID-19 yesterday's news. And 6 months from now, after we've all taken the vaccine, it's over and the economy is back to normal. Well, remember that stocks were doing really well before today, on the assumption that the economy was just going to be a disaster for the next couple of years, and that we would, because of that, get nonstop stimulus spending. So it was bad news is good news for the stock market. So now this vaccine comes along and totally erases that sentiment, and stocks go up again. I think they're not completely thinking this through, because what else happened when stocks were going up is that interest rates spiked. You now got the 10-year Treasury bond creeping up on a one handle. In other words, it was, what was it, like 0.55% for a while yield on the 10-year Treasury. Now it's like 0.9%. It's heading for 1% or more. And rising interest rates and shrinking stimulus spending are probably not a good combination for stocks. And people haven't figured this out yet. So I think that a change in sentiment is probably coming when people do think this through. And the stock euphoria that we're seeing today will probably be reversed back out. And in any event, even assuming, again, that this vaccine works, we're still broke. We still spent $10 trillion extra this year of borrowed money, and we'll still have to do it again next year no matter what. Just because we're beginning to inject people with something that will keep them from getting COVID-19, which turned out to have a death rate of what, 0.002% or some crazy low number now is what they're coming up with.
Oh, yeah.
So it wasn't actually going to kill all that many people anyhow. So now we fix it, but we've had to borrow maybe $20 trillion in the interim. So we're actually in much worse shape than we were 2 years ago by any financial measure. And we'll figure that out soon enough. So today is kind of an aberration, and reality will come back soon. That's my prediction.
I have no doubt that you are correct, John. And look, the infection fatality rate, otherwise known as the IFR, has been plunging. All right. Right now, there is an upsurge, an uptick. You can't really call it a second wave in the US yet, but there are more people. My guess is that the infection rate will go up in the northern states and it will go down in the southern states, like in Florida, because like night follows day, more people will be indoors. Up north, less people will be indoors because this is our dry season, although not today. We had a massive tropical storm that is really annoying to walk the dog. We were both like soaked to our skin.
But Kerry, that's right. Aren't you guys in the middle of a hurricane right now? I forgot. You're in South Florida.
It's not really a hurricane. It's
Oh, okay.
more a tropical storm. Uh, but for those Trump supporters out there, it's probably a tropical depression, uh, pun intended. But look, you know this. It's been diminishing anyway. I don't know what the agenda is behind the lockdowns. I'm not going to speculate. I'll just assume that everybody is acting in good faith. But look, you and I, we've been taking zinc, vitamin D. I was taking HCQ for a while, and now we find out, gee, the UK plans a mass shipment to the vulnerable of vitamin D. Wow, what a revelation when we knew that 80% of the people who were dying had vitamin D deficiency anyway, and the few tests that were done showed that vitamin D therapy saved a number of people. But you know what's wrong with vitamin D, John, and zinc? You know what's really wrong with it? There's no profit in it. You know, the profit margin on supplements is probably about 90%. The profit margin on a new drug on that vaccine is probably 9,000%. And Big Pharma goes for 9,000% returns. They don't go for 90% returns. That is for the plebeians.
Yeah. One of the conspiracy theories that might actually turn out to be true in all of this is that a big part of this was basically a power grab by Big Pharma. They suppressed news of things that were cheap and readily available that actually do cut the death rate dramatically for this disease, until they were able to get massive funding for vaccines. So the drug companies as a group are probably going to get tens of billions of dollars out of this. So this is another example of hard times in which the rich get much richer and everybody else gets poorer. So we had the stay-at-home stocks. Big tech stocks made a fortune, whoever owned those. And now Big Pharma, as they roll out these vaccines and everybody in the world feels compelled to buy them, they're going to make a ton of money too. None of the rest of us are making money off of this so far.
Hey, well, Bill Gates is Moderna. He's hoping that everyone in the world will be immunized at $100 a pop. Times 7 billion is $700 billion. And we know that the vaccine probably costs 15 cents to produce per dose. They're immunized from lawsuits because the government has chosen to immunize them from anybody who dies from the thing. They have no risk. They only have upside here. So yeah, conspiracy theorist, I'll buy that. It's certainly not proven, but the case looks overwhelmingly positive for Big Pharma. And I guess they weren't happy with Obamacare. They had to make the next big score. So HCQ had to be demonized. They never even addressed vitamin D or zinc. They never even talked about it. And but all the studies that were done worldwide on HCQ, the vast majority, like we're talking 80+%, showed positive benefits from it, especially when treatment was started early with HCQ or preventatively, prophylactically. So that's it for that. And hey, well, what's going to happen next? That's the tricky part. Right now, gold is down nearly $100. Silver is down 100, is $1.50 plus, and kind of to be expected. What this is kind of like it's just they bought a story, they bought a headline for the next day or two, and it's going to wear off. And then where are we going to be left, John?
Yeah, well, we have so many cross currents right now because a, a Democrat, the blue wave scenario was great for gold and silver because it would lead to massive stimulus spending going forward in the case of gold, and a big push into solar power, which would help silver. So that was great. And then we got divided government because it looks like it's probable, at least, or possible, if not probable, that the Republicans will hold on to the Senate, which means we might have gridlock. And then which seems to be a bad thing for anything that depends on stimulus, right? Because they're not going to be able to easily agree on the size and the scope and the timing of the next stimulus, should there even be one. And that doesn't seem to matter either. The Wall Street is now coming out and saying a divided government is the best case scenario for stocks. So in other words, whatever whatever happens is great for stocks. Keep on buying stocks. So it's going to take a while for this to shake out, because it doesn't look like a divided government is a good thing for any kind of financial asset that depends on stimulus. But if stimulus doesn't come, the economy will tank, because it's completely addicted to new money coming in now from the government, from the central banks. So then you would get the game that they've been playing for a lot of years now, where the stock market tanks after the Fed tries to tighten a little bit. And then that causes the government to panic and go back to easing again. So we're still playing that game. And we've got to sort through the political implications of the election and the possible economic implications of a vaccine that may or may not work. When we sort through all that stuff, we'll be back in the same place that we've been for the past 4 or 5 or 6 years, where the government would like to stop flooding the system with new currency because they're afraid of the downside of that strategy, but the financial markets won't let them stop. So that might be the story of next year too, where either you got to bail out everybody in sight no matter what, or the financial markets will collapse. So it could be that all of this noise, of the election and of the vaccine and all the other stuff that's going on will turn out to be non-events, completely irrelevant, because the financial system's problems are the big picture and the big problem. And nothing has happened that's going to change, the amount of debt that we've taken on, the amount of currency we have to create to cover the debt we've taken on, the amount of new debt that we have to take on to prevent a collapse from the old debt that we've taken on. All that stuff is still here with us. So it probably does not matter who's the president. Maybe doesn't even matter who's in charge of the Senate. Doesn't matter who's in charge of the Supreme Court. The problems that we have are going to be with us regardless. And those problems are going to lead to some kind of a monetary reset out there. So, it's been kind of a fun and a stressful 6 months as we've been going through all this political stuff. But I think that once all the dust clears, we're going to look around and say, oh, we didn't fix anything. We still have these same problems. What are we going to do about it? And that'll be the story of next year.
And that ties in. I tend to think that we're going to get stimulus. I don't know how much, but look, we've got a story here that you've picked out. New Jersey credit downgraded on big pension bond sale. Illinois tax measure failed, and junk ratings coming for both. Without a bailout from the federal government, there's at least 10, 12, maybe more. Maybe there's 57 states that are headed for bankruptcy. Florida, not so much. The South's been doing good. Texas, Southwest is doing well, but there's probably, I don't even know how many states really are headed for bankruptcy. Certainly Illinois, certainly New Jersey, New York, without a doubt, California. All these states are heading for bankruptcy in the absence of a federal bailout. Will Mitch McConnell have the intestinal fortitude to actually sit by and watch this happen, especially if Trump is not president? That's what I want to know. My guess, John, is no.
Well, see, that's the thing about a divided government. It's going to be hard for either side to get their really big priorities enacted. And the biggest priority for the Democrats is clearly to bail out the states and localities, because a lot of those places are run by Democrats. And the main voting bloc within them is public sector employees, which is a totally Democrat voting bloc. So President Biden, the Biden administration, is going to want to bail those guys out, but it's not clear that it's in the interest of the Senate Republicans to do that. So if they are in charge of the Senate, it could be that you can't get that part of a big bailout done. So what they'll have to do is focus on the stuff they can get done, like, infrastructure spending. Everybody loves infrastructure spending, so they'll clearly do that, right? and a few other things like direct payments to people. That was very popular. Those $1,200 checks, everybody loved those. So they might do that.
Enough of that.
Um, excuse me?
You can't get enough of those $1,200
Oh,
checks.
heck
But
yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah. Everybody loves a check in the mail. And so they can do that. And it would be hard for a Republican Senate to stand in the way of something like that. So we'll get stimulus, but it may not be the stimulus that stops a lot of these big trends from turning into crises. And not that it would be a good thing if we did bail out the states and cities. All that would do is shift the pressure over to the currencies, which is, the ultimate dollar collapse script. Then, that's how it's supposed to go. That we reach a point where we have to bail out everybody in sight, but the amount of money it takes to bail out everybody puts a lot of pressure on the currency, and then you get that final currency crisis before the currency reset. So we're still headed that way. And when we talk about divided government and whether they'll get this done, we're talking about short-term stuff like the first half of 2021. In the long run, it's unavoidable that we will have to bail out everybody in sight. Because, if these big cities and states do go bankrupt, that's a depression level event there. That would be a huge economic impact on the US. And if big industries like the airlines, because people aren't going to go immediately back to flying, right? Just because we have a vaccine that in theory works right now, it takes a long time to get everybody vaccinated. And in that time, nobody's going to want to fly any more than they do today. And the airlines are going to be bleeding cash, and they're going to have to lay off a lot of people. And, I think the airlines have something like 250,000 employees, right? But that's just the tip of the iceberg. All the hotels near airports and all the restaurants and all the cities that depend on tourism and business visitors and stuff like that. Um, that's 1 million people or more that are going to be affected by the airlines going bankrupt. So, all of this stuff is still out there. And a vaccine will not fix the cash flow problems of all these entities that are now pretty much functionally broke. So we still have to deal with all that. And that's the story that's the thing we'll be talking about for the next 6 months.
no doubt. So nothing's really changed. And yes, Biden being there, certain changes will take place, but we know that the problems will go way deeper than just who happens to be signing the $100 bill, right?
Yeah. And with precious metals, this is still a buy the dip secular bull market. So a drop like this it may not be the last drop of this episode, but it's a good time to put in some lowball offers on some mining stocks if that's what you're into, or to start looking around for some low premium gold and silver coins, because all of the stuff, all the problems that we talked about are still in place, and they all lead to massive amounts of new currency creation and new credit creation, which is a good environment for precious metals. So, something like today where gold drops by $100 and silver drops by $2, that makes the thing you should be accumulating just a little bit cheaper. So I get that it's painful and it's not a pleasant thing to go through, but if you look at it correctly, it is a good thing because it lets you buy a little bit more than you have today at a lower price, and a very much lower price than where it will be in 2 years. So this is just a squiggle in within trends that are already in place and that aren't going to be affected by this squiggle at all.
I got you. It makes total sense. And this is kind of what we've been talking about now for years. The day is finally upon us where your precious metal holdings might be just the thing you need to weather the storm that is no doubt on the horizon that we've been seeing for years. You and I, John, to carry the analogy a little further, we've been in the crow's nest in the ship with our binoculars, our super high power binoculars, saying, hey, there's a storm out there. And if we keep going in the direction we're going in, we're going to run head into it. and we don't know if the ship can survive this storm or not. It's so big. And the captain's just been saying, well, we got a deadline and we just have to keep going no matter what and hope for the best. Well, we're there now. So you better hope for the best as well. You need to take a look at John's website, dollarcollapse.com, ours, financialsurvivalnetwork.com, and send us your comments, kl@kerrylutz.com, where you think this is all heading. Like I said, we're not really concerned about politics. You know, John, when I started Financial Survival Network, I really never intended to cover politics at all, but it's kind of inescapable to some extent. Like, I really don't have any interest in it other than going to see a prize fight and or seeing a hockey game and see who gets their teeth knocked out or who gets knocked out after the second round. Other than that, I really have no interest in it because politics is the art of the possible, as has been said. And we're past the art of the possible. We're in the art of the divine because the only divine intervention can come close to solving any of the problems we're having now. And hey, till God decides to intercede, my money's on precious metals. I don't know about you.
Or aliens, Kerry. Don't forget aliens. They could still save us too.
Yeah,
But
well,
that's not it. You know, nothing humans can do is going to fix it.
but the aliens, they could be our enemies too, you know, like they've shut down our nukes, they've stopped planes dead in their tracks. So I'm not counting on the aliens, but maybe they're a better bet than God himself. You never know. It ain't over till it's over. The fat lady hasn't sung yet. And let's hope that she has laryngitis and never does sing again or impaired vocal cords. And with that, I will stop with the tortured analogies and metaphors. Just tell you, go make sure you follow us here. We're not out to, we're only out to help people. And look, it's coming. Just be prepared. John, we'll talk to you next week. That's it for now. Just send us an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. John, we'll talk to you then.
See you, Kerry.